Welcome to Leading by Example, upholding standards without compromise. I am your host, Dr. Vaughn, inspiring excellence, one lesson at a time. Are you ready to be better within your world and become the standard bearer within your organization or wherever you are? Leaders, aspirants, every one of you, all of us influence our culture, the organization's culture, our workplace's culture through actions taken both inside and outside of the workplace. I founded Ontero Solutions upon integrity, customer satisfaction, and attention to detail, specifically executive coaching and leadership development. Join in for fun, practical, and educational stories as I share lessons, both the good and the bad, that I have learned in my 20 years of leadership and management experience. Leading by example starts now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of our radio show, where we explore the real issues that challenge our standards, inspire change, and help us lead by example in a world that sometimes forgets what matters. I'm your host, Dr. Vaughn, and I'm thrilled to have you join me as we explore these important topics together. Have you wondered why our values are often compromised in our workplaces, politics, or personal lives? Why do we sometimes see principles pushed aside for quick wins or convenience? Leading by example, upholding standards without compromise. This show tackles these questions. Throughout this series, we'll dig deep into the tough issues, offering insights, answers, and most importantly, solutions. So are you ready to explore how we can all lead by example? If you are, let's get started. So today we're beginning a new series titled Empathy and Enforcement, Balancing Firmness with Understanding. This two-part series aims to provide insights into how empathy can enhance leadership effectiveness, especially roles where firmness is often necessary. It will offer leaders practical advice on incorporating understanding into their leadership approach, ensuring that they can lead with strength and sensitivity. So in this first episode, the role of empathy in effective leadership, we will examine the importance of empathy in leadership, particularly in roles that require enforcing rules and regulations. Leadership has always been about vision, strategy, and decision-making, but in today's world, one skill is increasingly recognized as a game changer. And you guessed it right, that's empathy. We often discuss the qualities that define great leaders: vision, decisiveness, resilience. But today, we're focusing on an often overlooked yet transformative skill. Can you guess what that is? You said empathy. That's correct. So what does it mean to lead with empathy? How does it influence team dynamics and organizational success? And most importantly, how can you integrate empathy into your leadership style while maintaining authority and accountability? We'll cover that, including actionable strategies, research-backed insights, and inspiring real-world examples. So let's get to it. We have quite a bit to cover. So we're going to discuss several topics, which include defining empathy in leadership, to include what does it mean to be an empathetic leader, how does empathy influence leadership effectiveness, benefits of empathetic leadership. We'll discuss how empathy contributes to a more cohesive and motivated team environment. Balancing empathy with authority. We'll talk about some strategies for leaders to remain authoritative while being approachable and understanding. We'll briefly highlight research or case studies that show the impact of empathy on organizational success. We'll go over some strategies for leaders to integrate empathy without compromising standards or authority. We'll talk about how empathetic feedback fosters growth rather than defensiveness, and balancing empathetic discipline with fairness and firmness. We'll talk about all of that. So first, let's go ahead and define empathy in leadership. We're going to delve into what it truly means to be an empathetic leader. Empathy is the ability to step into someone else's shoes, to understand their feelings, challenges, and perspectives. For leaders, this means going beyond surface level interactions and forming deeper connections with their teams. It's about recognizing the humanity in others and using that understanding to guide decisions that inspire trust and engagement. However, Empathy in leadership doesn't mean being soft or compromising authority. It's about being attuned, knowing when to push for performance and when to pause, listen, and provide support. Empathetic leaders focus on achieving outcomes and valuing and uplifting those who drive those outcomes. So to get started, we're going to discuss two prominent authors known for their works on empathy and emotional intelligence. That's Simon Baron-Cohen and Daniel Goleman. So Simon Baron-Cohen, his key contribution is a book he wrote titled The Science of Empathy and Empathy Quotient and the Empathy Quotient. His work explores the cognitive and neurological basis of empathy. Simon Baron-Cohen developed the empathy quotient EQ test and has researched the link between empathy deficits and conditions like autism spectrum disorder. Another key work of his is The Science of Evil on empathy and the origins of cruelty. And one of his most famous quotes is, "Empathy is our ability to identify what someone else is thinking or feeling and to respond to their thoughts and feelings appropriately." The second author that we're going to talk about actually a lot in depth as we go on throughout this show is Daniel Goleman, a psychologist and author of the groundbreaking book, Emotional Intelligence, which emphasizes empathy as a core component of emotional intelligence. According to Goleman, empathy isn't just about understanding emotions. It's about responding in ways that connect, support, and inspire others. The relationship between empathy and emotional intelligence, as quoted by Daniel Goleman, and I love this quote, "If your emotional abilities aren't in hand, if you don't have self-awareness, if you are not able to manage your distressing emotions, if you can't have empathy and have effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are not going to go very far." Okay, I love it. Very well said, right? So empathy as a core emotional intelligence competency. Goleman categorizes empathy as being under social awareness within emotional intelligence. He defines it as the ability to sense and understand others' emotions, perspectives, and needs, and to act on that understanding. This active responsiveness is what makes empathy so impactful in leadership. So you may be thinking, why is empathy so critical in leadership? Well, Goleman, he highlights several ways empathy enhances leadership effectiveness. The first is by building strong relationships. Empathy helps leaders forge meaningful connections with their teams, fostering trust and loyalty. Another way is it motivates and inspires others. By understanding what drives individual team members, leaders can tailor their approach to boost engagement and morale. Conflict resolution. Empathy enables leaders to navigate interpersonal conflicts by addressing underlying emotions and perspectives. And then lastly, empathy is critical because it drives performance. Organizations led by empathetic leaders experience improved morale, collaboration, and innovation. All businesses and organizations want that, right? So there are three types of empathy. So it's a little, complex here. It's not just, one flavor. Three types of empathy. And each one plays a unique role in leadership. So the first one we'll discuss is cognitive empathy. And that is the ability to understand another person's perspective, thoughts, or feelings without necessarily sharing the emotions. It's often described as perspective taking. And in a workplace example, a manager notices an employee resisting adopting a new technology. Instead of labeling that employee as being difficult, the manager considers the employee's perspective and realizes that they might feel insecure about learning the new technology. So in response, the manager schedules a one-on-one meeting to explain the change, acknowledges the employee's concerns, and offers tailored support. And in a parenting scenario, a parent sees the teenager is upset after losing a sports game. Instead of brushing it off, they reflect on how important the game must have been to their child. So in response, the parent says, "I know you're frustrated because you worked hard for this game. That must be tough. So in leadership, cognitive empathy helps leaders communicate effectively and anticipate team members' needs. The second flavor or type of empathy is emotional empathy, and that is the capacity to feel what another person feels, creating a direct emotional connection. It involves tuning in to the other person's emotional experience. And in the workplace, an example is a leader notices an employee looks visibly distressed after a meeting. And instead of ignoring it, the leader feels the tension and checks in with the employee. The leader may say, I sense that today has been overwhelming. Is there something I can do to support you? In a social setting, an example would be when you watch a news story about families affected by a natural disaster, you feel their anguish and fear. So, in response to that, you might tear up or feel a pit in your stomach as you empathize with their loss. And in leadership, this emotional empathy fosters deeper trust and rapport with team members. And the last type of empathy is compassionate empathy. And that is the ability to not only understand and feel what another person is experiencing, but also to take action to help alleviate their distress. It's empathy that leads to action. So in the workplace, an example would be employees are struggling to balance work and caregiving responsibilities. So in response, the empathetic leader acknowledges the employee's challenges, adjusts their workload, and provides resources such as flexible scheduling or employee assistance programs. And, not just to business or, the work settings, but within friendships. A friend confides that they're going through financial hardship. So in response, you may say, as a good friend, beyond expressing understanding, you offer to help by connecting them to financial resources. You may say, oh, or, I'm gonna help you with your budget, or you may just, directly lend them, money to get them over that hump. And then another example within community, after witnessing the struggles of people experiencing homelessness in your area, you feel compelled to act. So in response, you volunteer at a local shelter, donate supplies, or advocate for housing policies to help address the root causes of homelessness. Compassionate empathy empowers leaders to provide meaningful assistance and solutions, thereby enhancing team morale and cohesion. So the key differences between the three types in practice is that cognitive empathy focuses on understanding. I see what you're going through. Emotional empathy involves sharing the emotional experience. I feel what you're feeling. And then lastly, compassionate empathy goes beyond understanding and feeling to take meaningful action. I see, I feel, and I want to help, or I want to do something about this. So understanding and leveraging these three types of empathy can enhance personal relationships, workplace dynamics, and leadership effectiveness. So empathy is a tool, a tremendous tool for organizational success. It's not just a nice to have quality, it drives tangible successes. And in a Harvard Business Review article, What Makes a Leader, Goldman highlights several areas where empathy plays a critical role. Empathy plays a critical role in managing diversity by understanding and appreciating cultural and personal differences to build inclusive teams. Empathy plays a role in customer relations by anticipating and responding to customer needs to strengthen relationships. And empathy plays a role in team building by creating environments where team members feel valued and understood to boost overall collaboration and innovation within the organization. So you've heard all of this and you may be thinking, all right, well, if that's me, if I'm a leader that, may be a little bit deficient in empathy, how do I get better? So empathy can be learned. It's not just something that you have to be born with or whatever. Empathy may, although it may come naturally to some, Goldman stresses that it is a skill that can be developed. So you can cultivate empathy through practices such as active listening. And that is fully focusing on what others are saying without distractions or judgment. We talked about this a little earlier, the second one being perspective taking, which is where you make a conscious effort to understand others' viewpoints. even if you don't agree. Just make a conscious effort to understand. And then the third practice is mindfulness. Become more attuned to your own emotions and those of others through self-awareness practices. So, I mentioned earlier, how do what if you're that leader that's deficient in empathy? I'm going to give you 10 signs. Now, this list is it's not exhaustive per se, but it's a little lengthy, but I want you to listen to this. You may recognize some of these traits, hopefully not in yourself, but maybe in some leaders that you've supported in prior experiences. And if this is not, your experience, then just note these signs so that way when you see them, you can help that leader. So the first sign that a leader is deficient in empathy is poor listening skills. And that manifests in them frequently interrupting others during conversations, showing disinterest in team members' input or concerns, or multitasking during discussions, giving only their partial attention to whoever's speaking. And the impact that this has on the team is that the member feels, they may feel that they're not being heard. They may feel that they're, not valued, or they may also feel that the leader is ignoring them, which may lead to, disengagement and a decreased morale. The second sign is a lack of emotional awareness. And that's observed by a leader that fails to notice or acknowledge team members' emotions, such as stress, frustration, or excitement. And they may also tend to misinterpret or dismiss emotional cues, such as body language or tone of voice. And this hurts the team because leaders may miss opportunities to provide support or guidance, which, further exacerbate, those tensions within the team and erode trust. A third sign is the leader's inability to connect on a personal level. This is so huge. This looks like a leader who avoids personal conversations or who shows little interest in understanding team members beyond their roles. Leadership is a very personal, hands-on activity, and it's, for me, my thing is that leadership is done from the heart. It's a role, yes, leaders get paid for it, yes, but it has to be done from the heart for it to be effective. And the way that leaders do this is by, having those personal conversations, with members on your team. Become interested in them as a person, not just for what they do on the team to, help attain the mission objectives or complete the mission objectives. Be interested in them as a person, beyond that. Don't treat people as an interchangeable resource. That's something that a leader who is deficient in empathy does. Treat people as the unique individuals that they are. That's what a leader with empathy does. And as a result, a leader who does not do this, they create a transactional workplace culture where employees feel more like tools for productivity than valued contributors. Another sign of leaders deficient in empathy is that they overemphasize tasks over people. That looks like prioritizing deadlines and metrics without considering how these pressures affect the team. It also, these leaders show impatience or frustration when team members express personal challenges or need support. And, just as a little side alibi, I can say that I have done this from time to time. Now, I feel that I'm a empathetic leader, but there have been instances, for example, when, things have been hot and heavy in the workplace. And, I just wanted to get something done because there was a looming pressing deadline. And sometimes, we have to, practice self-awareness to be mindful when these things are occurring and what our responses are to those stressors. So that way we don't become, not displaying empathy to our team to where we actually, looking at them as, a resource to get the job done versus looking at their contribution or, feeling like you don't have the time to take, to show them or help them, do something that may be inhibiting their progress as you move towards that deadline. So again, a leader who overemphasizes tasks over people, they tend to create a results-only mindset that will lead to burnout, high turnover within their organization, and reduced team cohesion. The fifth sign of a leader that's deficient with empathy is they struggle with conflict resolution. And this looks like someone who addresses conflicts with a purely logical approach. They ignore the emotional dynamics that are at play, or they may take sides too quickly or fail to mediate fairly because of a lack of understanding of others' perspectives, because again, they ignore the emotional dynamics that are at play. And as a result, these conflicts may remain unresolved or they escalate, creating a toxic work environment. The sixth sign is frequent miscommunications. A leader deficient in empathy will deliver feedback in a way that feels harsh, critical, or dismissive to the recipient. They may use generic or unclear communication that doesn't acknowledge the individual's contributions or concerns. And as a result, it leads to miscommunication, frustration, confusion, and a disconnection between the leader and that team. Another sign is low team morale. And that looks like your team members are, they're becoming disengaged. They're not enthused, or they just don't share their ideas or, provide feedback on anything, which further results in high absenteeism or turnover rates among, that team or within the organization. And it may indicate a deeper lack of connection and trust. So we all need that, emotional connection to leaders. But again, that leader who is lacking on empathy, the result of having low team morale is that a demotivated team is less likely to innovate or work collaboratively. Again, hindering organizational success. All of these things are bad things. And we mentioned, recently a lack of feedback from team members. So team members will hesitate to share honest feedback, voice their concerns, or even, approach the leader at all with problems. The conversations are strictly professional with little openness or, candor. And as a result, again, leaders miss valuable insights that could improve their approach and strengthen the team dynamics and the overall success of, that program, project, or, whatever it is that you're working on. And number 9, another sign of a leader that's deficient in empathy is an over-reliance on sympathy instead of empathy. So what that looks like is the leader will express pity or sorrow for someone's challenges without taking meaningful action to address the situation. They may over-personalize issues, which will, lead to emotional fatigue or avoidance on their behalf. And as a result, sympathy without action can appear insincere. Can barely say that word. Sympathy without action appears insincere and fails to create the support systems that the team members need. And then lastly, the last sign of a leader deficient in empathy is that there's a resistance to change or diversity. That leader struggles to embrace diverse perspectives or approaches to problem solving. And they may show a lack of adaptability when team dynamics shift or when individuals express differing needs. And this results in limited creativity, inclusivity, and the leader's ability to foster a culture of belonging. So how can leaders assess their empathy? The first thing they can do is, or you can do, we all can do, is seek honest feedback. Ask team members or trusted colleagues, or your peers for candid input on, your ability to connect and understand others. The second thing is, reflect on your interactions. Regularly evaluate how you handle team conversations, especially during conflict or stress. You may have a trusted person on that team you talk to kind of get that feedback, or you may just want to, have a little journal and just reflect on, your behaviors, post incident or, post discussion, whatever it was. And then the third thing is, you can always use an assessment tool. Instruments like Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence appraisal or Simon Baron-Cohen's empathy quotient EQ test can provide insights. So if you're a leader that wants to assess your empathy and you want to try these tools, just reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to, to assess you and help you with the feedback with your results. And then the last thing that leaders can do to assess their empathy is observe patterns. Look for recurring issues such as high turnover or disengaged employees, because that indeed signals a need for greater empathy. So it's not the only thing, but that is a great indicator. Moving on, we're going to talk about the next steps for leader growth. So if a leader identifies deficiencies in themselves in empathy, they can take additional steps to improve by practicing active listening. That is, you're focusing fully on the speaker, you're asking clarifying questions, and you're reflecting what you hear, not to the point where it seems like you're mocking, the person who just said it, but, that you're actually listening and you capture everything that they communicated. The second thing is engage in perspective taking exercises. We talked about this. Regularly challenge yourself to consider others' viewpoints and emotional states. And, this is, can be easier, said than done because, most times you may not necessarily agree. But again, challenge yourself regularly to consider others' viewpoints and their emotional states. And again, leaders can participate in emotional intelligence training. That is a big thing. There are a lot of coaches that have emotional intelligence certifications and lead programs that can strengthen your empathy and interpersonal skills. And then lastly, leaders model compassionate behavior. Leaders showing care and understanding in everyday interactions. Reinforcing an empathetic workplace culture is a great way to continue to grow as a leader. So the first thing, is recognizing that empathy, a gap is not a weakness, so if you're not all the way there, if you are unsure, again, take that assessment. If you need help, reach out to me. We can do that assessment and, I can help you understand your results and then come up with a plan of action for bridging that gap. But again, recognizing that an empathy gap exists is not a weakness, it's a strength and the first step toward becoming a more effective and inspiring leader. So we're going to talk about an example of empathy in action. So here's a scenario. A manager notices that a top performing team member has started missing deadlines. And instead of assuming carelessness or laziness, the manager pauses and asks, "Is everything okay?" This single act of empathy uncovers that the employee is dealing with overwhelming personal challenges instead of making an assumption, that maybe they're just, being lazy or something. Understanding this, the manager temporarily adjusts expectations, offers support, and helps the team member get back on track. That's that compassionate empathy. The result of this is a stronger bond of trust, renewed productivity, and long-term loyalty. So essential within the workspace. Empathy is more than an emotional response. It's a powerful tool for leadership that builds trust, inspires growth, and fosters collaboration. So whether through active listening, understanding others' perspectives, or taking compassionate action, empathetic leaders create workplaces where individuals and organizations thrive. Here are 3 additional examples of empathy in action, but these are just some celebrity examples that I've, included just for fun. So the first one is LeBron James. He opened the I Promise School in 2018. So NBA star LeBron James demonstrated empathy for underserved children in his hometown of Akron, Ohio, by launching the I Promise School. And this school provides free tuition, meals, uniforms, transportation, and access to college scholarships. LeBron's initiative supports at-risk students and their families by addressing their holistic needs. And the impact is that the school has achieved remarkable success, significantly improving academic performance and family engagement. Wow, right? In our second example, Brian Stevenson advocates for justice through the Equal Justice Initiative. Brian Stevenson, he founded the Equal Justice Initiative, and he dedicated his career to addressing systemic injustice and advocating for wrongly convicted individuals. His work is rooted in understanding the lived experiences of marginalized and incarcerated individuals. And he emphasizes visiting prisons, listening to inmates, and telling their stories to foster awareness and compassion among policymakers and the public. His memoir, Just Mercy, highlights the power of empathy in creating systemic change. And the 2019 film of the same name starred Michael B. Jordan. It was a great movie. And the impact of this initiative was that the EJI has overturned numerous wrongful convictions and inspired a national conversation about justice reform and racial inequities. And in our third celebrity example, Kim Kardashian, her advocacy for criminal justice reform. So over the past several years, Kim Kardashian has become a prominent advocate for criminal justice reform, focusing on cases involving individuals who received harsh sentences for nonviolent offenses. The first thing, as far as empathy in action, the first thing was Alice Marie Johnson's release. I don't know if you all remember that. This happened in 2018. It was in the news. Kim Kardashian first gained attention for her activism when she successfully advocated for the release of Alice Marie Johnson, who was a 63-year-old woman who was serving a life sentence for a nonviolent drug offense, right? So after learning about Johnson's story through social media, Kim Kardashian met with then President Donald Trump to lobby for her release. Kim's efforts paid off, and Johnson was granted clemency after serving 21 years. Awesome. Another thing she does is criminal justice reform partnerships. She partners with organizations like #Cut50, which is a bipartisan advocacy group to push for criminal justice reform at the systemic level. And she has also supported the First Step Act, which is a landmark piece of legislation that reduces federal prison sentences and improves conditions for incarcerated individuals. And lastly, Kim Kardashian has the Justice Project. In her documentary, The Justice Project, which launched in 2020, Kim highlighted the stories of individuals impacted by the justice system, shedding light on their experiences and advocating for change. The film featured cases like Don Jackson and Alexis Martin, emphasizing the need for empathy and fairness in sentencing and rehabilitation. So I said all that to say that, you can have empathy even with celebrity influence. While Kardashian's activism has sometimes been met with skepticism due to her celebrity status, her consistent actions show that she uses her influence to amplify the voices of others. She combines empathy with tangible efforts such as lobbying, funding, legal initiatives, and publicizing underreported issues. So, kudos to LeBron James, Mr. Brian Stevenson, and then Kim Kardashian. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So moving on to the benefits of empathetic leadership. So why does empathy matter in leadership? It matters because the benefits are profound for individuals, teams, and organizations. So let's break this down. The first way that this matters is that it produces cohesion and collaboration. Empathy fosters trust, and trust builds stronger teams. When people feel understood, they're more willing to collaborate, share ideas, and work toward a common goal. Empathy leads to motivation and retention. Studies show that employees are far more likely to stay with organizations where they feel valued. Empathy signals to team members that they're more than just a cog in the machine. That is so, so important. Thirdly, empathy leads to improved communication. It enhances communication, making it easier to navigate conflicts and build understanding, and then also creativity and innovation. A leader who listens and understands different perspectives creates an environment where creativity can thrive. So here are a couple of, I have some research highlights I would just want to share. A 2019 study by Business Solver found that 93% of employees said they're more likely to stay with an empathetic employer. So imagine the cost savings and morale boost from reducing turnover. In a 2021 State of Workplace Empathy study, a key finding was that 84% of employees would consider leaving their current job for a more empathetic employer. And 72% of CEOs in this same study agreed that empathy impacts employee productivity and retention. So overall, empathy is not just a soft skill. Employees perceive it as a critical job satisfaction, commitment, and loyalty to an organization. In a second research study, the Catalyst Report on Empathy and Leadership, a key finding was that employees with empathetic managers are 76% more likely to report being engaged at work. So, work engagement is a big deal because, if you're engaged, that means that you're productive and, productivity greatly impacts the bottom line. Empathetic leadership significantly reduces burnout. 50% of employees within this study reported that empathetic leaders help them better manage stress. So, a key finding from this research is that empathy fosters a workplace culture where employees feel supported, directly influencing their decision to stay within the organization. And then the last research study is SHRM, or the Society for Human Resource Management. They had an empathy and employee retention report released in 2020. And a key finding of this research was that organizations that prioritize empathy see a 36% increase in employee retention rates compared to those that do not. This is huge, y'all. This is so, so huge, especially when you factor in the costs of recruiting, onboarding somebody, and then they leave because somebody within the organization was did not display empathy, or you had some leaders that were deficient in empathy and caused that person to leave. This is a very costly thing. So get ahead of this by making sure that your organizations support empathy training for leaders. And if they don't, seek it for yourself. And if you don't know how to find it or how to get it, reach out to me at ontarosolutions.com. Again, so within this study, getting back to the study, employees ranked empathetic communication and recognition as top contributors to their loyalty. And the study found that empathy in leadership strengthens emotional connections with employees, making them less likely to seek opportunities elsewhere. So again, empathy in the workplace doesn't just create a positive environment, it directly correlates with reduced turnover, improved engagement, and enhanced loyalty. Leaders who demonstrate genuine concern for their employees' well-being can build long-lasting, committed teams. So, to our, to our listeners, think about a leader you admire, and was empathy part of their leadership style? Reflect on how that impacted your experience. Reflect on if empathy was or was not a part of their leadership style. Think about that and how that made you feel. So moving right along before we run out of time here, balancing empathy with authority. One of the most common questions I hear is, how can I be empathetic without losing my authority or appearing soft? This is an important topic, so let's spend some time here. Empathy and authority are not opposites. They're complementary. When you lead with empathy, you're not weakening your authority, but you're reinforcing it by building trust and credibility. And there are 3 strategies for balancing empathy and authority. The first one being set clear expectations. Empathy doesn't mean lowering your standard. It means communicating those standards with understanding and support. For example, instead of saying, this isn't good enough, try, I know this is challenging, but here's what needs to improve, and how can I help you get there? The second strategy is lead by example. Demonstrating empathy sets the tone for the entire team. When employees see you listening and caring, they're more likely to emulate those behaviors, okay? It's contagious. And the third strategy is stay consistent. Empathy isn't about making exceptions for everyone. It's about consistently applying understanding while upholding accountability. Colin Powell said it best when he said, leadership is solving problems. The day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is when you stop leading them. Powell's ability to listen and connect with his team, even in high-stakes situations, strengthened his authority and earned their respect. So, you may not have soldiers, but, look at it as, the people that are within your charge. Whenever they view you as, not being able to help them with their problems, you stop leading them. It may be time for you to quickly, self-assess and, correct your course. So let's examine how empathy impacts organizational success through real world examples. The first example is in healthcare. A Center for Creative Leadership study found that leaders with strong empathy skills are 40% more effective in driving collaboration and engagement. So that just kind of, reiterates what we've already, been talking about. In another case study with healthcare leadership, in one hospital system, empathetic leadership by nurse managers led to a 30% reduction in turnover rates and a significant increase and patient satisfaction scores. So these results highlight how empathy can transform organizational culture and outcomes. So it just wasn't with, a leader and those within their charge. It also influenced, the actual, patients or their customers. So, again, think about a time when an empathetic leader helped you through a challenge. Think about what they did and how it impacted you. So, some strategies for integrating empathy. How can leaders integrate empathy into their leadership style without compromising standards or authority? Here are some actionable strategies. Again, start with active listening. Can't reiterate that or say that enough. Listen to your team without distractions. Give them your undivided attention. Don't take notes, don't check emails while they're talking to you. Give them your undivided attention. And number two, tailor your approach. Different team members have different needs. Take the time to understand and what motivates everyone. Leadership is a tremendous task. It's not given to everyone. And, if you're blessed to be in a leadership role, honor that thing. It's an honor to be in a leadership position, but at the same time, don't take a cookie cutter approach to everyone because, everyone is unique and you have to approach them from that uniqueness, not from, a generalization. Okay. And then the last strategy is set boundaries. Empathy doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It means understanding while still making those tough decisions. So, for example, when delivering feedback, you might say, I appreciate the effort you put into this project. Here's where we can make some improvements. That balance of acknowledgement and accountability creates a space for growth. So, our last little topic before we close out of this episode is empathetic feedback and discipline. So let's discuss these two areas where empathy is often overlooked. And again, that's within feedback and discipline. So empathetic feedback is a transformative approach that fosters growth, strengthens relationships, and motivates team members to improve without feeling attacked or defensive. It involves delivering constructive criticism or praise that acknowledges the person's efforts, emotions, and challenges. So here are some key elements of empathetic feedback. The first being start with positive recognition. Highlight what the person has done well. This sets a collaborative tone and demonstrates that their contributions are valued. For example, you may say, I appreciate the effort you put into completing this project on time, especially given the tight deadlines. Okay. The second strategy is provide specific constructive criticism. And that is addressing the area for improvement directly, but in a way that focuses on the task or behavior and not the person. You may say, I noticed that some of the details in the report were missing, which could affect the client's decision-making process. So let's discuss how to ensure that all the key points are included next time. The third strategy is acknowledge their perspective. Show you understand their challenges or their constraints. So you may say, I realized the deadline didn't give you much time to go back and double check. So do you feel there's something I can do to help next time to make sure, that this task is more manageable for you? Another strategy is to end with encouragement and support. Always do this. And you do this by reaffirming your belief in their abilities and offer assistance for improvement. You may say, I know you're capable of delivering excellent work. So let's start a quick review process to help you catch the details moving forward for the next time. And that's kind of like, in short, the sandwich method. So if you're more interested in that, I think I'm going to talk about that in the next episode. So stay tuned. I think it's there. But if it's not, let me just touch on that real quickly. So, the sandwich approach is just a quick way for you to think about, delivering feedback. So that way it's, given more constructive, the sandwich being, of course, the sandwich, you have the bread, the meat in the middle, and then the bread. So, the bread, the first thing being, tell the person, what they did well, tell them what you appreciate about, their efforts. And then when you move on to the meat, the critique, you offer it in a way that's, constructive. Don't attack them, say, I can't believe you did it this way. That is not the way I would have done it. How'd you come up with this? No, not at all. Don't never attack the person. Address the issue at hand. And then you want to, close that up or put the other piece of bread on top by, reaffirming, your belief in them to get the task done and to succeed. Okay? So the sandwich approach. And I had to learn that the hard way. I didn't even know the approach was a thing until I was, serving as an online facilitator and, unbeknownst to me, there was somebody going through the classroom looking at my feedback, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you are so harsh." And I was like, "What do you mean? It's the truth." I graded them, per the rubric, which was true. But they let me know that the way I was giving that feedback was, a little harsh, and we wanted to ensure that the students wanted to continue to learn and grow. So, I learned that the hard way, and that's something that, as leaders, we have to do sometimes, right? So moving on to empathetic discipline. That is all about holding individuals accountable in a fair, firm, and constructive way while respecting their dignity. This ensures that corrective actions are taken without damaging trust or morale. There are some key principles to empathetic discipline. And the first one being separate the behavior from the person, address the issue without labeling the individual. So instead of saying you're careless with deadlines, or you straight up reckless, say missing the deadline caused delays in the overall project. Let's talk about how we can address this moving forward so it doesn't happen again. Nice way of saying it, right? The second principle is understand the context. So before taking disciplinary actions, understand the root cause of the problem. For example, I noticed you've been late to work a few times. Is something happening outside of work that I need to be aware of? Something that's making it difficult for you to get here on time? And again, that's that leader showing empathy. The third strategy is communicate your expectations. Explain why the behavior is problematic and how it affects the team or the organization. For example, you may say, when you don't, meet your commitments or your timelines, it impacts the entire team's ability to stay on track. Let them know that there's a dependency on them to perform. You may also offer support and solutions. Empathy and discipline means working with the individual to create a path to improvement. So, for an example, you may say, "How can I help you address this issue?" Would tweaking the deadlines a little bit, or scheduling a check-in with me and you, would that help? Would that be helpful to you? Come up with a solution versus just dropping the hammer. And as an empathetic leader, you want to be consistent and fair. So ensure that disciplinary actions are applied consistently across all team members to avoid perceptions of favoritism or unfair treatment. And I know, you may be thinking, oh, this goes without saying, but sometimes, we could do things without noticing, because, you're going to have, your rock stars always. And then you're going to have some people that, need a little bit more help. And, unwittingly, sometimes you can, tend to favor those rock stars. All right. So let's just be mindful, because it happens. It's not a bad thing. It just happens. And you just want to be aware. So examples of empathetic discipline is with performance issues. So if an employee consistently underperforms, an empathetic leader might say, "I see you're struggling with hitting your targets. Let's review your workload and identify areas where you might, need some support, to succeed." With conflict resolution, an example, a leader might say, "I understand this situation has frustrated both of y'all. Let's work together to find a fair solution that resolves the conflict for you both." And with attendance problems, if a team member is frequently absent, an empathetic approach could be, "I've noticed a pattern of absences recently, and I'm concerned. Can you share with me what's going on so that way, we can figure out together how to address this?" And we touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's worth repeating to drive home because it takes some practice to get there. At least it did for me because I know that I can be very task focused. That's my personality type. So I have to actually try to or remind myself to not become a robot because I like to get the stuff done. But as a leader, you have to remember the person side of things, the people side of things, because they are the ones that get to those outcomes. So don't forget, people. They're the most important, resource or tool. And I don't like to say resource or tool, but they are the most important, asset that any organization or team can have. So empathetic discipline works because it preserves dignity, it promotes accountability, and it strengthens the relationship between the leader and that team. And it encourages employees to stay committed to their roles. So as a final thought, because we are running out of time here, empathetic feedback and empathetic discipline focuses on addressing issues constructively while maintaining trust, respect, and connection. So keep that at the forefront of your mind. By prioritizing empathy, leaders can create a culture where team members feel supported and motivated to grow, even when facing challenges. And also, your team will feel more like you're talking to them as the professional that they are expected to be within the workplace, and not as a child or someone that needs to be babysat or micromanaged. So to wrap up empathy, empathy is more than a buzzword. It's a transformative leadership skill. So whether you're leading a small team or a large organization, empathy can help you connect, inspire, and achieve results. This week, my challenge to you is to practice active listening in one conversation. Ask questions, listen without interrupting, and reflect on your learning. So that's a wrap for today's episode of the role of empathy in effective leadership. I hope you found our discussion both insightful and empowering. Remember, each of us has a unique role in fostering fair, inclusive, and compassionate workplaces. So let's continue championing merit, integrity, and empathy in all we do. A special thank you to my producer, Ms. Jessica Henderson, for keeping us on target and ensuring today's episode ran smoothly. So be sure to join us for our next episode on Thursday, December 19th, 2024 at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we'll explore empathy in high-stress situations. It will be another engaging and impactful conversation you won't want to miss. We'll have Dr. Terrence Sanders chiming in, co-hosting with me, using his expertise on leadership. So thank you for tuning in and being a part of this important dialogue. Until next time, stay inspired, stay ethical, and always strive, always strive to lead by example. This is Dr. Vaughn signing off from the role of empathy and effective leadership. See you next time. Until then, keep leading with empathy and purpose. Bye. You have been listening to Leading by Example, upholding standards without compromise. I am your host, Dr. Vaughn, bringing you inspiring excellence, one lesson at a time. Tune in to Transformation Talk Radio every first and third Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific for fun, practical, and educational stories as I share lessons, both the good and the bad, that I have learned in my 20 years of leadership and management experience. As we go through and learn these lessons, I would ask you to be thinking about those lessons that you bring, that you could share for potential, hey, you may even want to be a guest on our show. So think about those lessons as we continue to explore inspiring excellence one lesson at a time. For more information, please visit www.ontarosolutions.com.